What's a job that you're most proud of the work that you produced on it? Like,
honestly, Severance. It's like
you're really liking what's coming out of this.
Oh, I mean, we did all sorts of cool stuff, and like I was on season 1, but I wasn't full time, so like I did participate in a lot of it, but like it wasn't like, and it's funny like to even say like my show, because like I'm really kind of just a worker bee, in the grand scheme of things. I don't have any creative input. Like occasionally, like I'm a part of helping solve a problem, but like it's a problem for a creative decision that somebody else who makes a lot more money than me made. But that being said, being able to be a part of solving those problems is fun and rewarding, if, albeit very challenging often. But like, because then you get to the end result and you're like, I haven't seen a lot of it yet, but like as we're doing, you're like, I think this is going to be really cool. And like, so that was fun to work on a lot of stuff that like was like a cool thing in the moment. And for like a show that at this point for season 2, having seen season 1, I like as just like a viewer, which is the first time that's ever happened in my life, to like be working on a thing that I've already have some context for, that I'm like emotionally invested in, is kind of strange.
Right.
You know? And then on top of it, to like have the work we're doing be, you're like the people making the show care about the show, and the people watching the show care about the show. Cause it's also, and I still like, I don't know why I thought this, like when I started doing this like 10 years ago or whatever, in my head, I was like, I'm going to work on whatever shows and I'm going to tell people about it. And they're going to go, oh my God, that's so cool. And you tell people, you're like, I worked on the Get Down. And they're like, what is that? I haven't, or like even something like a known property. Like I worked on they did that reboot of Gossip Girl. I was on
you were telling me about that. Yeah.
I was on season 2, and like you tell people, and they're like, "They're still making that show," and you're like, "No, it's
different,
it's
but the
different."
same.
You're like, never mind, forget it. Like,
don't even worry about it.
Yeah, and whereas like Severance was the first time, I'm like, they're like, "You work on Severance," and I'm like,
"Yeah,"
and you're
that's
like,
cool.
It's a very cool feeling,
That's safe.
And it very like very possibly could be the first and last time that happens in my entire career.
I mean, yeah.
I hope not, but I'm not gonna get my hopes up.
Could you give us a rundown of like your role in like a day-to-day on the set of Severance?
Yeah. So it's, for most of that show, I was like B camera, where it's like, you're the other camera, which on a show like Severance, there are no like B camera shots. Whereas like some shows you have like the A camera will set up a shot and then they'll just like kind of squeeze B camera in on a tighter lens or something for like an over or a close up or an insert, whatever. Severance, like really like, they would like plan shots. So we would either be leapfrogging where like they're going to do this kind of intricate shot and then we're going to do this other kind of intricate shot, or we'd be doing coverage together. But so my role primarily was like, that was like focusing on the one camera, and we would be, I'm in charge of helping get the camera set up, like figuring out what the shot is with like just like getting the information from the DP and the operator. Along with the first, like we kind of will like, depending on who's closer to whoever, we'll just get the information and then figure out like what configuration the camera needs to be in. Like we shot that show on Sony Venice 2s. And so, whereas like, okay, are we going to be on a dolly, or we're going to be, like on a dolly on risers, or we're going to be like off in a corner? Do we need to put the camera in Rialto mode? Is it going to be on the ground? Like what, whatever, how do we need to set up the camera for the thing we're doing? And then doing that. And then like once you're like in the kind of shooting, it's like I'm, in charge of keeping track of like where the media is. And like I'm not the only one looking at that. Like the loaders will look at it. The first has it on his monitor so he can see it. The DITs like, can see it. But like that's like a thing I'm thinking about, looking at like the battery voltage to make sure that like the camera's not going to die, in the middle of a take, because to have a camera die, oh God, that's like the camera dying while you're rolling is like one of the worst things you can do.
Okay.
Kind of, because it's like you might be corrupting the footage on the card when you do that. And also like you just look like an idiot, So, and like, yeah. And you're like, if I have, like my camera's pointed at Christopher Walken and he's saying stuff and the camera dies, like I'm the asshole.
Yeah. You're
don't do that.
Yeah.
So make sure the camera doesn't die. Make sure the media is good. My case has like all the filters and stuff for like, if we need to, like throw in, we honestly didn't use matte boxes on that show, because we just went with the digital sensor with like old, like kind of vintage anamorphic lenses. But like on another show, it'd be, do we need to throw some diffusion in front of the matte box or go to a lighter diffusion or switch the ND, whatever, like that sort of stuff. And then slating and keeping track of like the takes and the, like the settings and stuff on a report. That's like the most identifiable part of my job because it's the one thing I do in front of the camera. And you can go like, have you ever watched behind the scenes where someone goes like take 2 and then hits the sticks? Like that's me. That's what I do. And people go, yeah, which is great because
that's at least one part of it. Yeah. It's easily to translate to someone who doesn't know as much.
Yeah. It's like, it's nice to be able to do that. I mean, cause like you say what your job is, you're like second AC, like that doesn't mean anything to anybody, but like versus someone saying like, oh, I work in, I'm like doing analytics at a startup. I'm like, cool. I don't have no idea what that means. Whereas like, I can at least point at like an image. I'm like, that's me doing my job. I know you've seen what that is. So it's that's kind of nice. I appreciate that. Yeah.
I mean, I'm tempted to ask if you have any stories that come to mind of just either good memories, fun things. I know you said you work with your friends a lot. Are there any shoots that you have in your head that come to mind of something fun to talk about?
Oh, I mean, I've done all sorts of insane shit.
I know because you were telling me a little bit about it.
And,
and one of them you mentioned was you were up in the snow doing, but that was recent, wasn't it?
Yeah, I maybe won't get so specifically into that because
was recent.
That's related to Severance, which is airing currently. I mean, everyone should go watch that show. It's great. But I actually do have another like Ben Stiller related story. The first thing I worked on that he did was there was a mini series on Showtime called Escape at Dannemora. I don't know if anyone's heard of it.
It's really funny. I auditioned for that show.
Huh,
what?
Okay.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
I did in New York City. It was one of the last auditions I ever did with with Rave Talent Agency, and it was for Ben Stiller's show, that like limited series, or it was the prison. It was like a prisoner thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I was auditioning for like I had to shoot somebody or threaten somebody or something. I had to go to a place in New York City and they recorded me.
How funny.
Obviously I didn't get it, but it was like,
now,
I was like,
I'm wondering what role you would audition for. Cause like all the main roles in that are played by like heavy hitters.
Yeah. No,
I don't know if you saw it.
It was,
he was good.
No.
Yeah,
It's like,
no disrespect to your acting chops, I'm sure. Yeah. But it's like the main. So it's like the main. It's like Paul Dano, Benicio del Toro, Patricia Arquette.
Oh, okay.
It's Paul Dano beat me out.
Yeah.
That son of a bitch. He stumped me.
But like for that show, we were like upstate for like a solid month, and we did go back in the wintertime, and like that was brutal. But like the whole thing that he was like doing for that show is the story is based off of like 2 real people that actually broke out of prison, and I don't know how he finagled it, and like he wanted to like shoot a lot of the stuff where it really happened. And so we went inside the actual active prison that those dudes broke out of twice.
Oh my! Active
prison. Yeah, we were only in like the yard, which they had like they like none of the prisoners got to use the yard that day, and they were not thrilled about it. But yeah, so like we were in the yard the one day and we came back and we're in the yard again, like in the wintertime. And like, that was, it was like such a thing. Like the day before, cause like the prison didn't want us there really. So, and we're like really, like being just very strict about like what we could and couldn't do, which makes sense. It's like a maximum security prison. And so we had to like inventory like every single little thing we had the day before, like put it on a list, and had to go over the list with someone, like someone from the prison, and show them where everything on that list was. And, just make sure all of our stuff was on the list, and like all your tools and stuff it all went together on a truck. And they were like, the next day you were only supposed to show up with like, I don't even know if I had my phone on me, like just your room key and your ID. And that was it. And there was like a whole like briefing the day before of like what you could and couldn't wear, what you could and couldn't bring with you. And like, I just remember like kind of at that moment, like a lot of us were like, oh fuck, this is serious. And then like the next day, like went in, they like took our ID, gave us a number, and then they put us on like a school bus and like brought us into the prison,
right.
And like in through these like giant like metal gate, and like we like got in and just like heard it close behind us with this big like doom, like just like, and I just like this very like final like just sound. I'm like trying to think of like a movie where I've heard something like that because I've absolutely heard that in a movie before. And just having this like feeling of like, we're never getting out of here. Like I'm never gonna, I live in this prison now.
This is the end.
And and then it being like one of the hardest days I've ever had to like work. Yeah, no, I mean, I do not envy anyone in prison, but as far as like, you work a lot of locations and like, that's just, you're just like, oh my God, it was crazy.
Sorry if you're in prison.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Can they watch this? I don't think so.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Limited internet access of
maybe.
some kind?
Maybe. Yeah,
maybe they have like those,
they won't be able to watch the video. They'll have enough bandwidth to stream the audio, but not the video. But yeah, like that whole shoot was crazy. Like we shot, like it's like Paul Dano's character, like he is like, after he's like running away or whatever. And he like, when he gets caught in real life, he's like crosses the street and some like just random cop was driving by, saw him and like shot him because he like realized who he was. And we shot that scene where it happened with like the cop who shot the real like David Sweat
with the what?
Like playing,
what do you mean?
Like as a consultant, like he was there, but the other, but
we had him do it again.
Yeah, no, it was wild. Well, like because Benicio del Toro's character like also gets shot and killed, like in real life. Spoilers. Jeez. And we shot that scene where it happened with the cop who shot him playing himself, and I'm like,
okay,
so it was nuts.
That did happen.
It was nuts.
Okay,
it was like we did some really really insane.
That's bananas
stuff on that show, and like they broke out of like there was a manhole that they had like whatever, like they like made their way to some pipes and like cut into the pipes and like shimmied through them into the sewers and got out through a manhole. And then after that, the town like welded that manhole shut. And the production somehow talked them into like breaking the welds on the manhole so we could shoot somebody climbing out of it. You know,
what were the significance of that exact manhole?
It's like, well, because it is like, I think it's, I don't know if it's like if you can see. I forget if you could see the prison from where it was or not.
Thing,
yeah, but it's like I think that Ben does like that sort of thing. He's like, let's really do it.
Yeah,
you know?
He's like, fuck it, yeah.
And like to some extent, like I do think it did. I as much as there's times where like when you're doing it, you're like, oh, this is so hard. I'm like, we could just shoot this on a green screen. Like there's definitely times where like, no, it's
get away with it.
We're like the Christopher Nolan approach. I'm like, no, I'm glad you did this for real because you can feel it and it works. As much as it makes my day-to-day life harder a lot of the time, it's like when it works, you're like, no, that was really cool.
I'm trying to think of what that guy was consulting on. Like, no, he didn't die that way. That's not the sound. That wasn't the sound he made.
I'm trying to remember. Like,
he bled way more than that. He bled way more than that.
No, I think it literally was just like, he was like, where were you? Like how we, like, they wanted it to kind of feel as true to what happened as possible.
That's so wild.
It was crazy,
No, that's really something.
It really was. That was that job was an adventure for sure.